Hello and welcome back to Vlogmas. Today I'm here with my unexpected enjoyable reads of 2017. So in this video I have a couple books that I read in 2017 that actually surprised me with how much I enjoyed them. Now these weren't necessarily my favorite books of 2017, but they are some books that I didn't know much about going into and ended up really enjoying, or ended up really enjoying regardless. I've got about 7 books for you, so let's get started. The first book that surprised me this year was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I think the reason that I ended up loving A Monster Calls so much is because I read it at a really weird time. I read it in the early stages of the year, kind of around the same time that Ev was going through some of her most intense cancer treatment. And obviously this book, it doesn't specifically say it is about cancer or there is cancer in it, but Connor's mother does have a life-threatening disease. And this book just kind of highlights Connor's process and how he's dealing with what's going on in the world. But I absolutely loved this book and I cried really, really hard throughout this book, and I watched the film and I cried even harder through the film. But it was just such a beautiful book. Like I really, really love it. It was such an easy read. I read through it in about 2 hours, just in one quick sitting. I remember it having a really profound effect on me for the next few days after I read it. So that was one of the ones that I didn't expect to absolutely love and ended up absolutely loving it. Now the next one I enjoyed for a variety of different reasons, one being because it actually surprised me with how much I enjoyed it after saying that I wasn't a huge fan of this author's work. Obviously that was Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. I read Lady Midnight last year. I read Lord of Shadows this year. It was actually one of my most anticipated books for this year and I really, really enjoyed it. I absolutely love the Blackthorn family, and so being able to follow them through their journey was a really, really great experience. And I'm not necessarily talking about, like, you know, the vampires and the angels and the downworlders and the shadow hunters and all that sort of it, but I just really liked the family dynamics of the Blackthorn family. So that's why I really, really enjoyed Lord of Shadows, and I'm super excited for Queen of Air and Darkness. Now the next book that makes this list I was super anticipating because I absolutely love this author and the concept sounded really great, but I was surprised by how much I actually enjoyed it, so much that it became one of my favorite books and I went on to collect a couple different editions of it. And that was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Now I absolutely love Laini Taylor. I loved the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy and I really, really loved Strange the Dreamer. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. As I said, it was one of my most anticipated releases for this year. I'm so glad that it lived up to the hype. I mean, a lot of the books that I have had hype for this year have let me down. So I was really, really happy to find one that didn't do that. But I really, really love the characters, I love the concept, I love Laini's writing style. I've said it a few times and I'll say it again, the only way I can really describe this book is like literally purely magical. So much so that it's definitely going to be on my rereads list for next year, early next year, even though the second book does come out next year. The next book that I was pleasantly surprised by was Hope and Red by John Scovron. This is a book I knew nothing about. By looking at the cover I was kind of reluctant, but I was recommended it when I went into Dimmicks one day, and I really, really enjoyed it. Even though whilst reading it, I was hating bits of it. For example, like the language and the nicknames and just a lot of the, not even the writing, it's literally like the language that the characters used. For some reason, it just grinded my gears, mainly like the nicknames and the names that they called men and women and stuff like that. I really, really hated that, but I really, really loved the story. I liked our 2 lead characters. I liked a lot of our sub-characters. I liked a lot of our supporting characters. Yeah, it was just a really good fantasy read. I remember really, really enjoying it. Struggling a lot with the language and like hate reading it, but then really loving it. The next book was one of definitely my most surprising reads because it was purely a cover buy. I knew nothing about it. Blurb was like, yeah, hit or miss, but this one really, really surprised me, and that was Skullsworn by Brian Staveley, which is a prequel to the Chronicles of the Unhewn Throne. Like I said, this was purely a cover buy. I mean, it's an absolutely gorgeous cover. I had no idea what to expect. Within the first few pages, I was already kind of like, I probably needed to have read the original books to understand like the world that we were in. It does seem to be quite I guess a thick world would be the best way to describe it. There's a lot of world building. The thing I liked most about this specific book was the characters. I really loved our main character, but I really loved her 2 companions. They were definitely my favorite part of the entire book. And the love interest, I don't know if he was so much a love interest as like an ex-love interest, but I really, 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 really liked the characters. Next book that surprised me, I wouldn't say I loved it, but I enjoyed reading it even though I'd heard people had really disliked it and it had fallen short for a lot of people, but I was looking for a fantasy at the time. I read this one and I was like, cool, I actually really enjoyed it. And that was God Blind by Anna Stevens. This one has a lot of different POVs, and a few of the POVs could have been condensed to like the same character. There are a few characters in here that I was kind of like, oh, who are you? What are you doing? And you had to kind of go back and to remember what was going on. But I remember really, really enjoying it when I read it. There were some really cool characters in here. Like I really, really liked their backstories and I really, really liked their backstories and kind of finding out more about them. So this was one that pleasantly surprised me. Now the final book I had that surprised me for a variety of different reasons. Like, I've got a few books by the author, I just haven't read them yet, so I didn't know anything about this author's writing style or the way that they build their characters, and at the time that I'd read it I still hadn't really heard much hype about it. People seemed to be enjoying it, but I hadn't heard anyone go like, this, I really like this book. So when I read this book, I fell in love. I mean, the world building was a little hard to get into at the beginning, but I ended up kind of figuring it out slowly. I absolutely love the way that this author writes the characters in this book specifically. I have started another book by this author and I'm not loving the character development as much yet, but I'm still early stages. So much so that this book became one of my favorite reads of 2017 and one of my favorite books, with book 2 coming out next year, which I'm super excited for, and that was Red Sister by Mark Lawrence, which I really loved. I just finished rereading it. I thought it was fantastic. I'm so excited for Grey Sister to come out early next year. Like I said, I loved the characters, I loved the story, I loved the writing style, I loved everything about Red Sister. Anyway, so those were my unexpected enjoyable reads of 2017. They're books that I didn't expect to enjoy and then ended up really enjoying. You may see a few of those on my favorite books of 2017. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to like and subscribe and let me know what your unlikely enjoyable reads are down in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Okay.